deck, put this on deck. Put this on deck, put this on deck. Put this on deck, put this on deck.
On Power FM. Voice of the People is a dynamic and interactive radio phoning show that gives listeners a platform to voice their opinions on current affairs, social issues, and community concerns. With engaging discussions, expert insights, real-time audience participation. Voice of the People.
A very good morning to you. My name is Patrick Chiffon. We're joining the Queens of Breakfast this morning on Voice of the People live on Power 91.3 as well as Dstv countrywide on Channel 92. Our guest this morning studied for a bachelor's degree in economics at the University of Zambia, graduating back in 1994. He later worked for Commerce Bank in Osaka as an assistant credit manager, and in 96 he moved to Namibia to work as a lecturer in economics at the Institute of Higher Education. He remained at the Institute until 2006, where he returned to Zambia and stood as Member of Parliament for Bangor constituency back in 2006 general elections, where he was elected a member of the United Party for National Development, serving 2 terms up to 2016. He goes by the name of Highive Hamududu. A very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Patrick.
Welcome to Voice of the People.
It's a pleasure to be here.
A pleasure to have you indeed. Our topic today, we look at the constitutional, proposed constitutional amendments indeed, and we're looking particularly at provision number 9, which is the provision for the vacancy of the office of minister. That is 90 days before the election. Why we look this particular clause of the Constitution?
Well, this is pretty easy and really not controversial. The amended Constitution of 2016 left some ambiguity in this particular clause. There was no express article to dissolve or to curtail cabinet before the elections. And that's why there was a problem in 2016. Remember, ministers continued and they were stopped by a ruling of the Constitutional Court.
Correct.
And that is the import of the ambiguity in that particular clause. And therefore, there is need to make it absolutely clear that ministers must vacate offices 90 days before the elections. So this is really an informed and non-controversial amendment.
All right. Can you briefly explain the current arrangement regarding ministers holding office that is during the election period?
Yes, Fortrace. You see, ministers are members of the executive. As you know, we have 3 arms of government: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. The executive executes or implements development. And therefore ministers are implementers. So they cannot go in an election while they are implementing, because it will give them unfettered advantage against the opponents. And therefore they must vacate office. And some of them are actually members of parliament. And is to create a level playing ground.
Which brings me just as a writer to what you're saying. There's been talk in recent days, I believe, of a provision or a proposition to have members of parliament stay to the very last day prior to the elections.
Wow.
Isn't that in contradiction with provision 9?
It is not.
How so?
Because members of parliament are not implementers or executors of development. You know, Patrick, there's this big misunderstanding. Sometimes I feel like I must run a school of government.
Please do.
Of governance.
by all means.
The misunderstanding of the roles of the 3 arms of government, the respective roles of the 3 arms of government, is a very big problem in Zambia and generally in Africa. The role of the legislature, where the MPs belong, is basically fourfold. The roles are fourfold. 1, representation, to speak on behalf of the people. 2, budget appropriation, approval of the budget in the parliament or in the council. Okay? 3, providing oversight, okay, on the executive. So these don't implement. Okay? And 4th, to make laws, legislation. So these are the roles of this arm of government. Execution of development or implementation is the role of the executive. Okay? Now, by the way, in many jurisdictions, I can tell you, South Africa, Namibia, which have acclaimed good constitutions, they, unfortunately there, even the ministers don't vacate office, which is really, I think we are better in this case. So we must pat ourselves on the back. But the ministers vacate office 90 days for the elections. We have had recent elections in Namibia. Elections in Namibia are held 6 months before the new officers, take charge. I think around October, and then the vacation of office orders happens in March. So you have, for example, a new president elected in October. He just remains president-elect. And the
in transition.
In transition. And the sitting president, whether he loses or not, continues to hold office until March the following year. So are ministers, so are members of parliament. But I think Zambia has a better provision. So the ministers, cabinet is dissolved because these are also participating in the elections. So, and they are executing development, because you can end up executing development in your constituency and have a better chance. The execution, the maintenance of roads, the water infrastructure in Lusaka is the duty of the city of Lusaka. Go to Windhoek and see what a city does, the city management does. Best roads, best water, okay, best lighting by the city. Lusaka is such a humongous city. The revenue base of Lusaka is 4 times bigger than Windhoek. Why is Windhoek cleaner? They are implementing things the right way. But let me finish that question first. I ran away from the question. Sure. I must make it very clear. MPs going up to the day before elections.
Right. And I was about to come back to that.
In the Constitution, the term of Parliament is 5 years. So, by MPs breaking off 3 months before the elections, it was unconstitutional. Unless you go to the Constitution and amend the life of Parliament. So, life of Parliament is 5 years. Life of a president is 5 years. Now, here is the issue here, that an MP sitting, remaining an MP after elections, does not give him an advantage. He does not implement.
Well, your critics say that you could be passing laws at the very last minute that advantage the ruling party, for instance.
At that time, Parliament is not sitting.
Okay.
Yeah, and by the way, when Parliament is passing laws, it's not one MP. It's the body, both the opposition and the ruling party. So you cannot pass a personal law. If I'm MP for Gwengwa, where I was, what advantage does it give me if I'm part of the lawmaking? Like I can tell you, it was beautiful. I was following Namibia because I worked there. The last elections with the new president and new parliament, parliament was sitting even after elections, the old parliament. While the MPs elect were just waiting to be sworn in the next 6 months. And there was a proper transition, a kind of handover. In this country, we have such catastrophic change of guard. When you have a new president and new MPs, they just run away as if there was a war. And these guys are
ruthless changeover.
Yes, and then these guys take over like the rebels from the bush, and then therefore they make mistakes that are already experienced by the previous government. We wouldn't have been making these mistakes at changeover guard every elections if they were proper handover. This is not a war. You pass the baton. If I was an MP for Matero or Mandevu, we are in Mandevu here, right? And then I leave office.
Chongwe, actually.
Chongwe. Oh my goodness! No wonder there must be delimitation. This is Chongwe here. Chongwe Zambia Road here. Yeah. And then Chongwe, how many kilometers from here? The whole airport.
Right.
And then again it goes round up to Chifem. But let me finish the issue of MP sitting up to the end. Just to make it very clear. The MP sitting up to the end, first of all, satisfies the constitutional clause that Parliament's
sits for 5 years.
Is 5 years. So this is just also correcting the anomaly that was in our constitution. Unless you go to the constitution and change the life of Parliament, that the life of Parliament shall be 4 years and some months.
Yeah, 9 months.
Yes, as long as the life of Parliament is 5 years, MPs must serve up to the end. By the way, when I was in Parliament, MPs even wanted to sue, government. for compensation, that their remuneration was only done for 4 years, 9 months. So they needed it, that they should be paid
for the 3 months.
For the 3 months, because their term is 5 years. I want to ask you, Patrick and Fortrace, what's the term of an MP?
5 years.
5 years. So this constitution, this amendment is just trying to clean up that and make it 5 years.
So now, just before Fortrace comes in, you alluded to the fact that if the term is indeed 5 years, Parliament does not sit the 90 days prior to the election. Is that by law?
It is not sitting, but it can sit.
Okay.
Let me tell you, even when Parliament is dissolved, and for example there is a problem, the President can recall. There is a provision to recall Parliament.
Right.
During that, if for example there is war, the President can recall Parliament. Meaning the Parliament that was dissolved can come back. And therefore, if it's an emergency in that 90 days, Parliament can sit. How does that give an advantage to an MP for Chong?
So what happens is that Parliament is indeed dissolved 90 days prior to the election.
Yeah,
but if need be, it can be recalled.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So in terms of functionality, and there's need, because a country cannot live in a vacuum. Okay? So there's even a provision. And the crafters of the Constitution from the very beginning, they saw the danger of that vacuum, that there are things a president cannot do alone. Okay? Parliament will be recorded so that, the people speak. Like if there is war and there are some decisions that must be made. Okay? So for me, that's not a problem. The point here is, which many people are arguing here, that it gives an advantage to a sitting MP. No. If you were a poor MP for a constituency A, there is nothing that can give you advantage by remaining in office for the last 3 months. You are going because your work is seen, not in implementation. Did you speak for the people correctly? Did you speak in Parliament? Were you on the side of the people on lawmaking? Did you speak for the people? Okay? Did you speak out on the right priorities on the budget? So the job of an MP is to speak. Pali by the name is called speak. Pale is to speak. Now, you have MPs who are busy pushing Urubaras. No, that is community service. That's not your role. And that's why when I came to run as a member of Parliament, I had read a little bit. If you checked my manifesto, I had my manifesto as an MP. I was a youth that time. I was a young person in Wengwa in 2006. I will say, I will advocate. I will speak. I will advocate for the tarring of the Mose Nico Road. And I advocated until before I left, it was done halfway. You advocate, you don't make a road.
So you're in agreement with the likes of Laura Meti, governance experts who say...
She's very right.
Who says, look, aspiring MPs should not say they'll bring development.
Yes, and those MPs don't think they're bringing development. Now, the bringing of development by an MP is through speaking. Okay? They are involved.
And mobilizing.
Yes, in speaking. But not in implementation. For example, this CDF, for example, there must be order now going into the future. We appreciate the increased CDF, but the lack of understanding of the role of an MP is really problematic. Not only by the MP, but by the constituents, by the voters themselves, who think that an MP must do a road. Now, we have a lot of political projects now because of that.
An
MP, for example, politically, he says there must be a clinic here. That's wrong. The location of a clinic shall come from the technocrats at the district. The district health officer will go there and look at the parameters they use to locate a clinic. How many people are there? What's the distance to the next clinic? Even in school, you don't just say there must be a school here because there are a few of your favorite voters. That is wrong. There are parameters established by the technocrats to locate a school, to locate a road, to locate a clinic, because you cannot build numberless clinics. The budget cannot carry that. You know that there's a carrying capacity for the number of schools in this country. You can't build a continuous number of schools. The country will collapse. You can't build numberless number of clinics. The budget won't carry that. So there is a science, there are parameters, there's an architecture by the technocrats that determine the need for a clinic. We must leave that to the technocrats. What you must do yourself, that I will speak for you and ask the authorities to consider
the parameters.
yes, whether we must have a clinic. And they'll come and say, okay, Member of Parliament, what you said on behalf of the people, we might not have a clinic there, but that site, because that's where it qualifies. The distance to the next clinic qualifies. The population qualifies, so we are putting a clinic. We must never put political projects. This country does not have the budget to maintain numberless clinics, numberless schools, numberless roads. Do you know that there's a limitation?
I just want to jump on the CDF. It's not the MP's role, as you earlier on alluded to.
Yeah.
So now, who's responsible to misappropriation of funds in that case?
The members of the executive. And that's why when you see at the Public Accounts Committee, and I sat in the Public Accounts Committee for many years, and I chaired the Budget Committee in Parliament, the people who appear before the Public Accounts Committee are not members of Parliament. Because they're not implementers. They are the town clerk, director of works, to explain how they use the money. The permanent secretary, if it's the central government. So it goes without saying that it is the members of the executive that are responsible for the execution of development constitutionally. And some of the MPs are going beyond their role. They want to be seen like the ones who are implementing. That is ignorance. In wanting to be elected, you are destroying the governance architecture that works. That's why now you are seeing, even some roads here, you start buying funny graders and so on. Look, when you buy a grader, I was in the Parliament myself, and we used to sit in the councils, and we advocated for the buying of the grader in Monza district when CDF was 1.6, and we put CDF together for the 3 constituencies, each one contributed, and we told the town clerk and said, okay, we'll look at it as technocrats, and they went around to shop and they bought a Caterpillar grader. Nice brand, durable brand, brand new, from Barrowware. Do you understand? Because these guys, they know. It's not us to go and buy funny graders which have no backup spares. It's not just a grader. You must buy a grader which has backup of spares, because a grader, this deals with a very, very laborious work. The breakdowns, the replacement of the blade and spares. So the moment a grader breaks down or a blade is blunt, you must replace it. Not where now you say, okay, we are importing a blade from China. That's wrong. So the type of a grader, for example, must fit within the architecture of longevity of the grader, and the technocrats know that. And that's why an MP is not qualified for everything. You see, MPs come from, by the way, there's no qualification for an MP. It's only grade 12. If it is a place where the entry is so low, it's Parliament. So don't expect too much. They don't qualify, some of them, to implement. But if the people want them, they must vote them. But the technocrats are employed based on qualification.
Is it the technocrats?
They are more qualified to implement because they are qualified.
But is it the technocrats, still on the issue of CDF, is it the technocrats who approve loans where they know that there's no capacity to pay back, or where they know that there's likely to be misapplication of these funds?
Exactly. It's the technical arm of the council. Now there is a problem, and I'll answer the other question of the committee. Here's the issue here, is that the CDF, now as a local fund, was very huge. Is quite huge right now. It's jumped from 1.6 to over 30 million. And therefore, what we've not done well as a country, which we must do from these lessons learned, is that we must also upgrade the capacity of the council. So the council was overloaded beyond its capacity. In the councils, there is no department for loan administration. That's why there's a disaster. And some MPs also are trying to go beyond their roles, trying to push applications. We don't do that. Leave the selection to the council. What we must do now is to build the capacity of the councils. If we want the council to administer that loan component, we must put a loans department at the council. It was not there. Hence the disaster. So the money was increased before looking at the capacity of the council. We have now learned lessons. Going into the future, there is need to improve the capacity of the council so that it can implement this increased responsibility.
Did you agree with some critics that say the CDF increment in funding was done too hastily? That some of these issues that you raise now, that you say we've learned lessons, should have been put in place before the increment was done?
Yes, I think it's the different organs of government. At the higher level, it must be appreciated. People wanted more money. I was in Parliament. We were calling for more money. at the grassroots. I think it's positive. There is something very positive. But like any new thing, there are always these teething problems. And therefore, what we must do is just learn very quickly. Okay? How long does it take to improve capacity? You can improve capacity in 1 month. Capacity is the easiest thing to improve. If you don't have it, you can subcontract capacity. You understand? For example, as Power FM here, you don't build. Okay? But you're in a nice building. You can build another one. You get a contractor. You can contract. So issues of capacity are the easiest things to deal with. You can do it in one decision. And therefore, it's a question of making the right decisions. If, for example, council has no capacity to implement the loan component, you can give that to CEC or to a bank in that district to administer on your behalf at a fee. The more efficiency, because you give the worth applicants. And then even the MPs, those who don't know their roles, will not be manipulating the agencies because they'll be given performance criteria.
This is Voice of the People. Our guest this morning is Mr. Highive Hamududu. He is the PNUP president, and today we discuss the provision for the vacancy of office of the minister 90 days before the elections. Under Zambia's current constitutional framework, ministers are allowed to retain their positions up to and during election campaigns unless Parliament is dissolved. Now, more back to the topic at hand. How do you see this provision contributing to a fairer and a more democratic process?
And precisely. The Parliament ministers are vacating office. By the way, before it wasn't like this. Before 2016 Constitution. And therefore, it is a smarter way. As I said, ministers are implementers. They belong to the executive arm of government that implements projects. And therefore, if they stay in the office, they will give themselves an advantage. If I'm a minister of education and I'm running in a particular constituency, I will take a school in that 3 months. They say, okay, vote for me, I'm even putting a school. They start building. And then I'll have an undue advantage. So against the parameters. Exactly. So, even with the parameters. Okay. Even with the parameters. Working with the technocrats, okay? Undue influence. Exactly, undue influence because of elections. But then, so by dissolving cabinet, okay, by means of vacating their positions 3 months before the elections, it removes that advantage. And therefore, as you are saying, creating a fairer playing field, okay? So precisely that is the issue. As I said at the beginning, it's a non-controversial issue. It's cleaning up the different roles of our arms of government, and also not creating an advantage to a minister who belongs to the executive, which implements.
What mechanism would you suggest can be put in place to ensure ministers comply with this type of requirement?
Immediately, once this is amended and the minister continues, it becomes illegal. It becomes an illegality, and that's why it's important to make it very clear here. You remember, Fortrace, in 2016, because of the ambiguity in this clause, ministers continued.
And then they had to pay back.
Exactly. And the people said, okay, you ministers, you are appointed because you are members of Parliament. Parliament has been dissolved. Because of that, you should have also vacated. So it was not very clear. Now,
but the executive said, they were on terra firma by keeping them in office
because there was ambiguity. Okay, there was ambiguity in the Constitution, and that's where this amendment makes very clear that 90 days before, even the president knows, the ministers knows that they must leave. But they continue because it was a bit grey. So they were removed because of the other extension on them that they were also MPs. Because you are also an MP whose parliament has been dissolved, you must leave. Now, in this particular case, the life of parliament is what? 5 years.
5 years.
And now it's being smoothened to 5 years. If parliament is not dissolved, if cabinet does not, if you don't put this provision for ministers to vacate, they can end up being there because we are now implementing a 5-year mandate for an MP. So the argument that was used in the Constitutional Court, if, for example, the 5-year mandate of Parliament is implemented, this amendment, it becomes difficult for an MP, for a minister to leave. They can even be there up to the end because the Constitution now provides for them. So this particular cause is important to make it very clear that you members of the executive, as ministers, you must vacate offices 90 days before the elections to create a level playing fields, because you are implementers of the projects. You can swing development, because that is your role in the area where you are running for elections, and give yourself an unfair advantage in that 3 months, which an MP cannot, because it's not an implementer. I wish I can stand as an MP and he's still there and he claims that I can do this. I can actually beat him because I know the laws. So the people who run for elections, first of all, don't just run as an MP. Understand the role of Parliament, the role of an MP. Okay? Because and unfortunately, Patrick, in Fortrace, there is no school for governance in this country. And the people just say, okay, I want to be an MP, before you understanding the roles of the different arms of government.
And I was about to ask, Mr. Hamududu, it's very important that people like you come on such a forum to explain some of these issues. But on the flip coin, are members of parliament getting the same kind of civic education, if you will, about some of the issues that pertain to their role?
You know, they must. You know, I was privileged in this parliament when it started. I was one of the resource persons that were invited
to the Speaker's office?
No, induction.
Okay.
Induction program for the new MPs.
Right.
So I was trying to explain the role of a member of parliament, you know, but that is too short. You must read it together with the Constitution. Masire, who was his deputy, said, no, we'll take it on. There is a book written, either brave or foolish, for wanting independence for a country that was not viable. In our own lifetime, Patrick, Botswana has proved us wrong. Within 25 years, Botswana's economic indicators beat literally the whole Africa. You know what happened?
Yeah.
They respected the separation of powers. It is the only country, by the way, that never went one-party state in the sub-region. We all went one-party state. Zambia, Tanzania, Angola, Mozambique, including Zimbabwe, which got independence just in 1980. Botswana, they decided that they would keep their democracy in its entirety, and the parliament remained robust. They never went to one-party state. They left, you know, the multi-party politics. Do you know why multi-party politics works? Is because there's a threat on a ruling party that if you mess up, you can be removed. Just that threat makes the ruling party, deliver. The ruling party, then the BDP, the Democratic Party, which lost just last year, it was in power for over 30 years, right? They never lost power during this enviable development. But the fact that there was a threat that you can be removed, it made them work hard. And it also spoke to the efficacy of the doctrine of separation of powers, having an independent parliament. Have you listened to the Botswana parliament? Oh my goodness. The leader of opposition is my friend, Chanda. Oh my goodness, when he stands to speak. This Botswana here, this small Botswana, you can't compare with this dongo parliament of ours, where they're just politics. Not because the people here are not educated, it's because we have politicized governance. Everything is political. Even something which is straightforward, like for example this provision, people will be arguing, no, but without a clear understanding. Here's my plea, colleagues. Let's understand the science of government. If we don't understand the science of governance, we will never develop, because development is a science, governance is a science, meaning it has rules. Until we reach that point, we understand the rules of play in running government, knowing your role, will never develop. So we must aspire to reach that level. And I can tell you some of these amendments speak to the deepening of the rules as they must be.
Mr. Hamududu, certain sectors of society argue to say, okay, well and good, it is a science that we need to know about. It needs to be inculcated in us as a citizenry. Why is it being done now? If you're to educate me about the science, why didn't you start 3 years ago so that by now I would have a thorough understanding? Why 18 months before the elections?
You know, Patrick, elections are always there every 5 years. Okay? 2016 amended elections was done in the election year. This one is being done a year before the elections. Okay? And any government or any people must aspire for a better government the next cycle. You cannot continue with the very problems you have identified in this cycle into the next cycle. And therefore, in this 5-year cycle, there are reforms that are born out of the realities of governance and how things work. That must be improved before the next cycle. I can tell you, for example, the taking of MPs back to the councils. We cannot proceed without MPs at the council. Why? The council is a local parliament, is even the most important in this devolved type of government, when we have decentralized. So these MPs you see here lingering in Lusaka, when they are on recess, they must go back to their constituencies. Even the nature of sitting of parliament, even when the parliament sits, do you know why? In the wisdom of the creators of parliament, they created a sitting arrangement like that, that parliament sits in the morning on Friday. Okay? In the morning on Friday. And adjourns at lunch hour. Okay? On Friday. Because you are expected to go to your constituents, even in parliament sitting. So you have Friday afternoon, start off. Saturday, Sunday, okay? To go and have a talk with your people before you come and speak, because in parliament you are speaking for the people, not for yourself. Other vehicles that can make an MP reach their area.
You did.
You can even look if you know you put MPs. I don't want to state there. I can only say that there are vehicles that can ensure that an MP is in the constituency the same Friday, okay, and be back in Parliament on Tuesday. Come back on Tuesday morning and be here. There are vehicles that take 2-3 hours, even to go to Chimbamironga or Kaputa or Chama, you know, and so on and so forth. So we just need to embrace technology.
You did, sorry to cut you off short, you didn't mention that Namibia, Botswana, those are the countries that you cited as examples of having a better constitution.
Yes.
Why do you think they are faring better than us?
You know, because they were deliberate. By the way, at independence, Fortrace, we had a very good constitution, but we adulterated it. Do you know that at independence, for the first 2 terms of our independence, okay, before I was born, by the way, I was born after independence. Yeah, and you don't know where you were born. Okay, the first 2 terms of our independence, we were a multi-party and liberal economy. It is said that we made more progress economically in the first 10 years of our independence. Okay, we did gigantic things. That's when gigantic infrastructure, the international airport from the city airport, the envy. If you ever traveled around, we have the most envious airport, put away from Lusaka, with nature as you drive. You don't study in South Africa, they don't have such kind of a scenery. That was vision. The University of Zambia, in that same period, the parliament, by the way, we had the best parliament for many years, for over 30 years, in the whole sub-region. On a hill, on an acre, with animals walking around, with a copper plate on top. I mean, this country was headed for greatness if we did not adulterate the constitution. In 1973 was a disaster. When we damaged the democratic arrangement for governance and began to adulterate the doctrine of separation of what? Powers. There's nothing new. Between 1964 and 1968, the opposition, young as it was, had a leader of opposition. Haring Kumbula was leader of opposition, who was the second biggest party, ANC, at that time. We were so advanced, and by the way, and we kept on even increasing the constituencies as parameters were increasing. 75 seats at independence. The next election, 1968, 110 elections. So constituencies moving with the dictates of the increasing parameters, population, level of development. So there was a trajectory of calculated progress. I can tell you, scholars are saying, if we had not gone one-party state in 1973, Zambia was going to be the envy of Africa. At independence, Zambia had the second best development indicators in Africa after Tunisia. The quality of life. When we damage by the way, you damage a country through the constitution. So we must aspire to have the best constitution that produces better governance and therefore better development.
The phone lines are now open, 0955-997-997 or 0979-192-485. Our guest this morning, Mr. Highive Hamududu, who is the PNUP president, and here discussing provision number 9 of the proposed constitutional amendment, the provision for the vacancy of office of the minister 90 days before the elections. 0955-997-997 or 0979-192-485.
All right. So you also did mention that ministers are allowed to retain their positions up to and during election campaigns, which is unless Parliament is dissolved. Now, why is it being seen as problematic for a lot of ministers to retain their positions while campaigning?
Yeah. Ministers, of course, this constitution now makes it very clear that they will vacate. Okay? So 90 days they will not be there. They will cease to be ministers 90 days by constitution before the elections. Okay? It's made clear here as ruled by the Constitutional Court in 2016. Do you know why ministers, as a bonus answer, why ministers, those MPs who become ministers lose elections easily? It is because when they are appointed ministers, they take dual roles. They are MPs, they are members of the legislature and the executive. And that's why people are saying, and I strongly hold that view, that the ideal situation is that we must have ministers appointed from outside Parliament. That's what people have been speaking even in different constitutional review commissions. But as usual, as Zambians, we politicize. Why should the president appoint ministers himself? You get his friends. That's how he's a president. He was one for that period. He's the head of the executive. And therefore, he must appoint ministers, for example, ideally, if we were agreed that ministers must come from outside Parliament, because now they will belong to one arm of government, the executive. Now, they are monsters. A monster is something with two heads. So they are MPs. They play the role of Parliament and the role of what? Executive. And because of that, and they're supposed to be in the office every day, generally. And then the people are underrepresented. So they have no time because now they have two jobs. You know, when you have two jobs, two full-time jobs, really it's difficult to perform. So they become part-time MPs. And therefore they are not seen in their constituencies mostly, and the people begin to complain. And history has told us that most people who become ministers, they lose elections. Why? Not because they are bad people, it's because they have two jobs. And therefore they give half attention to the constituents. If Zambians agreed, the best way could have been ministers appointed outside Parliament. But you know what people are arguing? No, the president will appoint his friends and so on. Kenya has done it. Kenya appoints ministers from outside Parliament. They agreed. Just like we have been discussing over the years. The cabinet secretaries, they are called in Kenya, they are from outside Parliament. And therefore, when they go to Parliament, they are ex-official members of Parliament. They don't vote in Parliament. They don't vote. They are non-voting members of Parliament because they don't belong there. They only go there as members of Parliament to go and account to the executive,
as members of the executive,
to the Parliament. So now you have Parliament, they sit there to account. Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Finance, Minister of Local Government. Why do we have blah, 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 blah? Why are roads bad? So the Parliament is united in holding members of the executive to account. You get my point? Like in Kenya, they are not even members of Parliament. They go to account. So you can appoint ministers and they're not members of Parliament. You can remove them. But they go to Parliament to account. So accounting is to the Parliament. And that now enhances the silver blade of what the doctrine of separation of powers does. That's how some of the effective governments have done by getting ministers outside, appointing outside the Parliament. Not only that, the president will have a bigger pool to get the best. Parliament does not necessarily have the best. Yeah? Okay, you might not have the best medical person there. Sometimes you have, sometimes you don't. Okay? And so Parliament might not produce the best. So you look now at the whole country to get the best engineer for roads, to get the best. Of course, now we have a few. Look at Engineer Mirupi, one of the best engineers in the country, one of the best Minister of Works. So Sogotwane, one of the best economists. But sometimes those might not be there. in other areas. So the president now begins to choose, if that provision was there, from the greater pool that has better possibilities to get people to run those ministries.
But if we've had so many constitutional reviews that have recommended that we should indeed get cabinet ministers from outside of parliament, why wasn't this in the proposed amendment?
It's us, the people. We are saying no. You see, people are arguing without thinking through. No. If Fortrace becomes the president, she will appoint her friends and so on. If you appoint your friends, you will fail. Who can do that? Because, if you appoint your friends who don't have what it takes to be a minister, will they stand in the parliament to account? They will be ashamed. Therefore, there will be even a pressure for the president to appoint the best. Otherwise, he'll be embarrassed in the parliament. So there is always a checkmate that when the president appoints people from outside and they're accounting to parliament, you will always get the best. Otherwise, you'll be a laughing stock. So it has an inbuilt corrective mechanism that you cannot dare appoint low caliber because they will always appear before the spotlight in parliament. And now parliament, is live. So how do you appoint a person who will embarrass you? You lose the election in the next elections. You understand? You will embarrass your party. And therefore the president, because of the structure of our governance, the accountability structure of our government, that the ministers will account to parliament, you will be forced to appoint the best. And therefore there is no threat. But do you know why it's not happening, as you asked Patrick? People say, no, it can't work. No, people now, I don't know why. They are just arguing without thinking through. Let's not bring politics here. Let's discuss principles. And I'm not here for politics. I do politics outside there, and I do it very well. Not here. Here, we are speaking to the country. We are building the country. And therefore, we are speaking on the principles. And these conversations, colleagues, must be based on principles. Otherwise, we destroy our country. You can't run a country, Patrick and Fortrace, through a mob thinking. No. I've been involved in mob things when I was a student. The best the mobs do is to make riots and destroy. So we must think through. So this discourse, even on the amendments, must be an issue of thinking through the principles, not politics.
If you have a contribution or question for our guest this morning, Mr. Highive Hamududu, you can come through 0955-997-997 or 0979-192-485. This is Voice of the People, live on Dstv as well, countrywide on channel 92 on Topstar, as well as 91.3 in Lusaka and surrounding areas.
Mr. Hamududu, are
just kind of hold your thought. Let's see if we can get this call on it. Good morning. Mauka Wanji.
Brother Morgan. Yeah.
Brother Morgan, please go ahead.
Former member of Parliament, Highive Hamududu.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. Yeah. And the PNP president. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Speaking, yes, I agree with the member of Parliament, especially the backbenchers. They account the executive. It is true, yes. That's true. And we have a Parliamentary Account Committee, which is there in Parliament. So this Parliamentary Account Committee, they look at misusing of public fund. Is it equity? The way the funds allocated is somebody's store. That's the fact. If it is okay, then they find okay. Then the law of member of parliament again is that we have 156 member of parliament in Zambia, and each member of parliament should go and lobby in the parliament and speak about his own or her own concerns. The fact of the member of parliament, because 156 member of parliament stands for all corner of this country. All corner of this country, there is a member of parliament, and that member of parliament, what is he doing to his or her constituents so that we develop together this country? So the member of parliament should speak on behalf of the people, the way they speak on campaign. Manzi, I will make a road, I will bring clinic, a police post, a clean water, all this, the way they should speak in the parliament that my people have no good roads. Yourselves
So it's up to the voters. Vote quality. 6 days after independence, you are still voting for dongo-dongos. So you understand? Eh? Yeah, so a person must know, stand up there and raise the issues. So if an MP just saying, yeah, so why did you vote for him? You did not in parliament, they have to speak well and clearly and informed. They must know. At budget appropriation, they must speak to the priorities. You understand? Put the ministers to account. You understand? Eh? You do that. So it takes two to tango. Sometimes we are blaming ministers as if they put themselves. MPs did not put themselves. You voted for them. You are shouting using a mob business. So this is a technical job. Let me tell you. You can't give your car to a person who is not qualified. Your car will be bashed right and center. If you want your car to stay for long, put a qualified driver. I don't allow unqualified drivers to drive my vehicles. Simple. I would rather use a bus if my driver is not there. I don't take a risk. Even the constituencies, do not just vote anyhow. Look for quality. First of all, understand the role of an MP. Number one, can he speak well? Does he know the issues? Okay? Will he articulate budgetary issues? Okay? Will he hold government to account? Well informed, you understand? Can he make good laws for us? So don't blame MPs. They never went there on their. You voted for them, and therefore we voters sometimes are to blame because we vote low quality. Let's vote quality. Come on, Patrick. We are 60 years after independence. There are many people who have what it takes. Look for the best. Put the best in your constituencies. Put your best in your wards. Put your best as mayors. Do you know? Let me say this. A mayor of a city must be an accomplished person. You understand? Eh? That's what they're called city fathers. Then you are putting city children to lead us. A mayor. Do you know in other countries, after mayor, you become president? I think you've seen in Madagascar. Do you know even what he catapulted the late Michael Sata? When he was governor for Lusaka, that's when people saw what he could do. You understand? Eh? So a mayor of a city or a council chairman must actually be above the MP. By the way, a mayor is senior to an MP. Do you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Oh my goodness. A council chairperson is senior to an MP. That's why you must understand the roles of these, these offices. For example, the council chairperson for Mwanze is in charge of 3 constituencies. So who is the boss? That's why, let me tell you, that's why we are messing up. Do you know that in the constituency, at the political level, the constituency chairman is the boss of the MP? Do you know that? These guys, they go and kneel for elections. After winning, the MP becomes the boss. How? Do you know when I understood? When my constituency chairman, an average brother living in the village, when he called me, Honorable MP, we want you here. I'll leave parliament because I'm going to my boss. But my boss is not the speaker. No. The constituency chairman is a boss of the electorate that put me in office. Do you know who employs an MP? There are MPs who think that they're employed by parliament and they go to parliament as if it's work. No.
It's the people.
It's just the assembly there. Your employers are your voters. And when they call you...
Sorry to cut you off short. We do have a caller. Hello, it's you to the Power Breakfast.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. You're through the voice of the people. Your name, please.
My name is Maponga Marego.
Please go ahead with your question or contribution real quick.
Good morning, Mr. President.
Good morning, my brother. How are you?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
Thank you.
So for me, my question would be, like, what do you want people to know you for as a standing candidate? You know, obviously people know your name, Highive Hamududu, but what else, like, do you want people to know you for? You know,
wow.
What do you stand for?
Mr. Maponga. Wow. I think you have heard, I hope you were there from the beginning of the program. If you are following the program, you can actually describe who I am. It is in the content. So for me, really, I cannot judge myself. My brother Maponga, it's you to judge me. And this morning, we are articulating not a political position, but the governance principles.
Which brings me to my next question, Mr. Hamududu. What feedback, what response are you getting from your colleagues, current and former ministers or MPs about this proposed provision number 9?
No, it's not about the ministers and the MPs. It's about the country. Yeah. So the constitution is not for an MP.
But what are they saying as former colleagues or current colleagues?
Well, for me, I'm not interested what an MP is doing and what he's saying and what the minister is saying. I'm interested in the right principles and what Zambians are saying from an informed point of view. So the MPs and are interested parties. So by and large, they must not talk much because they are conflicted.
So if Zambians are saying this thing that you are trying to push, we're not understanding it, what's your response to that?
And that's why this program is, and many programs, to explain in detail. I think for the ministers, their job is to explain the principles, and the people make a decision. Even now, we are explaining the principles, then the people make a decision. You get my point? This is not about you are UP and DPF, you are MMD. No, we are discussing the governance principles, the constitutional principles that underpin the governance of the country beyond us. So we are creating a governance architecture that will house us and the generations to come.
Would you say that the elephant in the room for the majority that perhaps do not want to listen or do not want to understand, the elephant in the room right now is bread and butter issues, is load shedding hours? Like, look, address my load shedding, address my meal price, address my fuel price, and then maybe we can talk about this proposed amendment that you're talking about.
Wow. But let me say this generally. I've told you about Botswana. The right constitutional architecture is what produces development in the future.
So are we doing this for the future?
For now and the future. Do you know what? This country has been in debt 2 times. First, under the First Republic, after 91, we had a debt of 7 billion. Do you know why we went such huge debt? It's because of not respecting the doctrine of separation of powers. You have an executive which is not accountable. An accountable executive cannot go beyond the certain borrowing thresholds because there's a parliament to say no. Again, we have gone back to huge debts. What is destroying the quality of living? Is this a huge debt on top of this country? I mean, even at personal level, when you have debts, it is tough to survive. So people don't know that one of the biggest drivers of the cost of living is because of the poor governance that occasioned high debts. Where was Parliament? So there could have been a weakness in borrowing. And I'm happy that value addition, one of the things that the 2016 Constitution brought, and the people said, don't pass it, remember? Now there are some people are saying, don't pass it. I say, no, it was good. No. President Edgar Lungu is signing while his eyes are closed. Yes, he was supposed to close his eyes because it was not his document. It was from the people. You understand, yeah? Now, I was there. I mean, it's just yesterday. I was people who were opposing are the ones who are saying that, oh, this constitution has brought good things. It has brought running mate. It has brought 50+1. The same constitution people are shouting on radios, don't pass it. I was in the parliament. Don't pass it. There were palakas all over. But I suppose that is good democracy, so that you are put under pressure, because when you're in government, you must be put under pressure so that you continue to refine. I can give you an example. The minister in parliament, the current Minister of Justice, in the ministerial statement, he put a line which everyone rose up. He said that the number of nominated MPs will be provided in an act of parliament. People rose up. Correct. Okay? And I was one of them. Okay? Behind the scenes. I can't rise that in the public. You understand? Yeah? And please, I tell people, call your minister. They are public officers. They are not working for their private companies. And I called the minister. What is that? He said, no. Honorable, that issue is corrected. It was just a mistake. It has been corrected here. The nominated MPs are cast in the constitution. Okay? Because if you put in an act of parliament, which requires simple majority, you can be changing willy-nilly. Do Do you know why in this process, this 1 month, people must talk and talk very strongly on these amendments? It improves the quality of the final product.
Okay. So it cuts off. Hello, it's you to the Power Breakfast.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Marco Bunt.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, we seem to have a bad line there. We'll see if you can call back 0955-997-997, 0979-192-485.
You know, Patrick, the question you asked about bread and butter issues.
Sure.
We must never compromise the economy going into the future. The laws on borrowing must be cast in the constitution to a point where there must be even a 2/3 majority. The parliaments must never allow executive to borrow and put
beyond this capacity to pay.
Why this country is in this is that after debt write-off, remember after debt write-off, the economy was so nice. Remember, 2007, 08, and so on, we were all enjoying. The moment we went into debt, we had this crisis.
Good morning, you're through the Voice of the People. Yes, good morning, go ahead.
Nezepanche open out kuli bagesi batu bali mu studio.
Hamududu.
Why wangala launch maningi kufaka pressure pali constitution as now? Because it's Zambians still harsh pali constitution kuisaina. Because when people say Zambian constitution, Zambian residency, people malaika kazia pale. But not the constitution because as now, tona time kiribu, tena towards the election. Sembe constitution yao baipeka towards kushobora my election as now hapa siri muhali because Zambia is in civil mushe mu Zambia. Iyaloma people driven constitution ni wandu bwanji because wandu wa Zambia simaenda kwa parliament kukama ma problem tina but mana mangala mweka mbodiyana ma MPs na ma ministers kukama vale mu from kambe mu constitution yan because kama for example people driven constitution I can give you a good example. You know about person with disabilities. Because in parliament in Zambia, muli bewambili person with disabilities. But then tuonamo ndimo mekaweka muli mshemushi. So mkasiteka heta ikipilekera isamu komboni olama ya ditame kambira mja parliament. Wantifuna constitution as now siti kandiza constitution. Kantuona kimalati ya motivuta. Undaona udula. But muli busy kulinda constitution. Visi yenu vijati. Transereni sima Zambia. Wantifuna. Sezani kuna skomo.
Thank you. Many thanks indeed. 0955-997-997, 0979-192-485. The response, Mr.
I think I can have a bit of time here.
Sure.
And it's also related to the question you answered. You asked about bread and butter issues. People don't know the genesis. The high cost of living and the poor development state of our country is underwritten by bad governance because of a poor constitution. That's why we must continue to improve the constitution. If you look at America, the landmark to their development was the constitutional order, which produces good governance. Now, good governance won't just come up from nowhere. Let me explain something. These things are happening concurrently. It doesn't mean that when this 13-point amendment is being done, the issue of cost of living is not being addressed. It is being addressed concurrently. It doesn't mean that the electricity crisis is not being addressed. It's being addressed concurrently. So the passing of this bill does not negate addressing load shedding. The load shedding, again, is a mistake of yesteryears. Zambia was warned more than 30 years ago that diversify your energy sources because relying on hydro alone with the reality of climate change as we go into the future will be a problem. We never did that. We were supposed to begin energy diversification right in the 90s. So what has this got to do with these 13 points? In fact, so what we need, if these amendments in the future must improve accountability so that by the way, even raising the bar of the quality of MPs who can ask government why there is no diversification of energy sources. Had Parliament held government to account for the future danger, for government to be futuristic, we wouldn't have gone into this. What is happening now, my brother from the compound, is that for the first time, the issue of energy diversification is being addressed with so much power than before. You have seen now the diversification in other energy sources that are not vulnerable to weather conditions. The solar investment. Already, the government has announced that in this year, the target is to have 1,000 megawatts coming from solar. Thermal, which is core-driven, which is not vulnerable to weather conditions, they are putting the next phase of Mamba 300 megawatts. So just from solar, in the next foreseeable future, we'll have 600 megawatts. So that will augment the hydro. Therefore, the investment to address load shedding is happening now with so much power. What we want now also is the Parliament to hold government accountable and borrowing parameters, strengthen the parliamentary role so that after 2005, when Zambia's debt was written off, we should have put stronger laws. That's why I take proper MPs there. If we had done that, no government could have gone beyond what we have borrowed now. So you have seen now the constitutional weakness wrought by a weak, which produces a weak parliament, has allowed this laissez-faire, this carefree that has led the executive to borrow beyond the measure. So having learned from the past, we are supposed to put constitutional provisions that curtail the mistakes of yesteryears. And that's why going into the future, Patrick and Fortrace, we must strengthen the laws, legislation on the borrowing. That after this crisis, over the next 10 years or 20 years, when we are out of these young people, we should never go into such a heavy national debt. Because that's what actually happened in the 1990s. The economy was down. We were there, far from the compound. If we were already old enough in 1991, we were there. There were shortages, things were bad. The cost of living was so high. To go, if you are going to Mongo, my friend, sometimes you have to wait for a bus for 3 days. There were no buses, and the reforms were done. But again, we have again brought the very sin that led us down, the sin called debt. I mean, even in our Christian walk, there are some sins you must say, okay, now let me stop. Isn't it? Then you become a better person, isn't it?
Mr. Hamududu, as we conclude, unfortunately, we're out of time, but let me just ask you this in conclusion. What are the next steps for this proposal of provision number 9? Where do we go from here in 60 seconds? So
for this one, great. It's a non-controversial. It's on point. It's issue-based. It addresses the ambiguity, and this really is non-controversial. Implemented, then there will be no gray area for a minister to want to continue and go to constitutional court again, say, we are ministers and MPs, so we can continue. So the clarity in the constitution is paramount, and therefore this provision, sir and madam, if it's implemented, has now become clear. We have nailed it now. No more gray area. There will be no ministers in office in the election period, making a level playing field for all participants, which creates fair elections for all parties participating. Good for democracy.
Our guest this morning, Mr. Highive Hamududu, is the PNUP president, former member of parliament for Bangor between 2006 and 2016. We were discussing the proposed constitutional amendments with a particular focus on provision number 9, which is the provision for the vacancy of the office of minister 90 days before the election. Mr. Hamududu, many thanks for coming through.
Thank you, Patrick, and Fortrace. It has been a pleasure.
We'll certainly do call upon you some other time.
Anytime.
Many thanks indeed. This has been Voice of the People, Patrick Chifomba, sitting in with the ladies.
It's one lady
on the Power Breakfast.
The beautiful lady.
Indeed.
Voice of the People, Monday to Friday from 8:45 to 8:30 a.m. Great morning conversations start here. Turn up your radio. Turn up your radio.
Sending the tip over, Jack. Sending the tip over, babe.